Welcome to Beyond the Chutes, the rodeo podcast that dives deep into the heart of Western culture. I'm your host, Doug Simcox, and here we explore it all. Rodeo's rich histories, the legends and their stories, today's competitors shaping the sport, and the behind-the-scenes heroes who make it happen. From bucking chutes to timed events, from rodeo history to current events, this is your all-access pass to the world of rodeo. Our show is presented by Parasite Systems, who help vet clinics and animal owners experience the power of sight. New in 2025, the all-in-one analyzer featuring fecal site AI, hemosite AI, and flow site AI technology. You can find them at parasitesystems.com. Welcome to Beyond the Chutes is presented by Parasite Systems. I'm your host, Doug Simcox, and today I am recording in our studio here in Taylorsville, Kentucky. The weather is still cold. We've got about half of the snow still on the ground. We started up with about 5 inches of snow. We're down to about half that right now, and it has got about a half-inch ice crust on top. So if the wind comes up, there's no drifts going to happen. But we had a bit of melt yesterday. It started to warm up. Today I'm hoping it gets up above 32. The sun stays out, and we can continue to melt the ice that we have on our roads here. And you know, BTC was almost on the road again. We had made plans. We had booked rooms to attend the Augusta Futurity in Perry, Georgia. And then the storm came in. And, of course, I'm talking about Marlon Harris and myself. We had arranged to go down. We had also arranged to talk to Mr. Michael Walton. Of course, he's from Mansville, Georgia, which is about 38 miles east of Atlanta. And since we couldn't go down, I said we got to get him on the phone. And today he joins us by the phone. So welcome to Beyond the Chutes, Mr. Michael Walton. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Great to have you here with us today. And we met up on the mountain there at the Mountain Cove Rodeo Reunion on Labor Day weekend, and that was a great event. You enjoyed yourself, Michael?
Sure did. Seen a lot of old friends.
That is such a neat event, and encourage everybody to check them out. They've got a Facebook page, Mountain Cove Rodeo Reunion. Every Labor Day, Mr. Marlon Harris, he puts that on with his wife, Claire, and over this last, little bit of time, Marlon said, we got to go down to the Augusta Futurity there in Perry. And he says, when we get there, you need to talk to Mike. He knows cutting. So, Michael, we're going to talk today about that 45th Annual Augusta Cutting Horse Futurity that actually kicked off last Friday on the 10th of January. So tell us a little bit about that event.
Okay. This event started in 1980. Some friends of mine, Norman Bruce, Roger Odom, and Billy Morris of Augusta, Georgia, wanted to start a cutting horse futurity because there wasn't any east of the Mississippi River. So they formed these people, they got together, and they named it the Atlantic Coast Cutting Horse Futurity. And it stayed that way for 1980, 81, and 82. And then it was being held in Augusta, the James Brown Arena, which was a nostalgia place to show a cutting horse because it just, the crowd could react to a horse working a cow with the rider sitting there not being able to rein the horse or do anything like that. They just had to ride and let that horse work the cow itself. And it's judged on points, and it succeeded. They changed it to the Augusta Futurity. A futurity is for horses that's 4 years and younger than 4 years. You can't show these futurity horses up till their fourth year in a futurity. So it was necessary for Georgia to have something like that because there was a lot of breeders here in Georgia with the quarter horses. The NCHA, National Cutting Horse Association, it got started arranged in 1946. So it's been there a long time. But the real cutting horses, they came from the ranches out in Texas where you would have to separate cattle and doctor them and all this. And so in 1940, the American Quarter Horse Association got started where they could register these horses. And it's just exploded since the 80s. Where else do we need to go with this?
Well, this is a lot of information. Let me step back a little bit because you talked about the real cutting horses coming out of the West, coming out of Texas. When did, and I know the National Cutting Horse Association got started in 1946. Do you know when some of the earlier events, when did this organize as a sport?
Yes, on some of the big ranches, the cowboys would get together and they would have a jackpot. You know, they'd put up money and work cattle and see who had the best horse. And that's how it got started. It got started by the people that was taking care of the ranches, and they needed something to do on the weekends, so they started the jackpot cuttings, and there was a lot of money probably changed hands.
Well, that's similar to rodeo. You know, we see some of the traditional events, of course, bronc riding, saddle bronc riding, you know, all about breaking horses and bucking horses. We see tie-down calf roping, which comes off the ranches. Team roping comes off the ranches. And I'm always curious how, you know, this kind of event got started. When did they really start breeding for cutting horses? I mean, there had to be money coming in. There had to be big competition starting for it to form up like you said.
Yes, sir. Well, they took some thoroughbred mares and bred them to some range type horses, and they developed a horse that is capable of speed, being able to stop, turn around, go the other direction. And they developed cow sense, which is bred into a horse. A horse can work a cow. Any horse can work a cow. But does he have the cow sense that's bred into him? And that all come back with the King Ranch with Little Peppy and the makings of Doc Bar, Docalina, Pocolina. I mean, your Doc Bar horse and your thoroughbred mares were a good cross at that time. And they got where they could register these mares by showing them and having them register a merit in an event. Then you could actually get papers on the horse from the American Quarter Horse Association.
So the American Quarter Horse Association started about 6 years before the National Cutting Horse Association. When did AQHA, the American Quarter Association, really start to recognize cutting as one of their events?
I'm going to say around Georgia, we probably didn't see a nice registered quarter horse in the state of Georgia until about 1956, somewhere along in there. So it just developed, and you could register these horses, and it would put more value on them because they did have a bloodline, and you was able to trace and breed and keep up with the bloodlines. And like I say, Doc Bar was probably the start of it all, and he was by 3 bars, and I forget who his mother was, but it won't tell me right now.
That's all right. And which came first in Georgia? Was cutting already happening before the you said the quarter horses came in Georgia in 1956. Was cutting already in competition in Georgia at that point?
Barely.
Barely. Okay.
Yeah, the AQHA, American Quarter Horse Association, started having shows around 64, 65, somewhere along in there. And the cutting, I mean, you would have all your pleasure, halter, reining, and your other events. They would be during the day, and then after all that events were over, they would start the cutting.
Okay.
So it would be right after your AQHA shows.
Okay. And prior to that, cutting was mostly west at that point, west of the Mississippi?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it was building out there. They were developing the bloodlines, you say Doc Bar, and crossing them with thoroughbred mares. And back to the cow sense. It's bred in. I mean, there's nothing I can do to build that in a horse, nurture it. It's got to be bred in. It's either there or not.
In my opinion, yes, sir. It's either there or it's not.
Okay.
Like I say, you can take a horse and work a cow, but if you can drop them reins down and not touch that horse's mouth, and that horse work a cow, now that's bred into a horse.
Okay. And how, for our listeners, and for me, what is cow sense? I mean, how just on a regular horse, how would you look at it and go, that horse has got some cow sense? Certainly, we've got to have cows around, I take it.
Yeah. If cow sense in a horse is knowing where to go to stop that cow.
Okay.
And without you helping that horse that much. When these young horses are developed, of course, you ride them and you train them, but the more you work that cow, the better these horses that do have the cow sense. They stop and turn around with that cow, and it's just a feeling like you never done. Maybe on a Ferris wheel or one of them rides.
Tilt-a-whirl, maybe. Tilt-a-whirl.
Tilt-a-whirl would be a good one, yes, sir.
You can feel it. And then as a rider, you've got to have a heck of a seat because you said earlier you're not touching the reins. You're maintaining a seat.
Yes, sir. You're maintaining that seat. That's exactly right. The first cutting horse I ever sat on was Ronnie Hodges, a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we could ever get him to do a podcast, he could tell you a lot more than me, because he started out more in the cuttings than I did, because I started out in the AQHA showing halter and pleasure and reining horses.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, Ronnie, he went to work for Jake Hughes, which was one of the first people to have cutting horses and raise cutting horses in Georgia. I went to Ronnie's, I can't remember the date, but anyway, I wanted to ride a cutting horse because I had a mare that I needed to finish for an AQHA championship.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you had to work, have 4 working events, and I had everything done except for the 4th event, and we were going to do it in cutting. Mm-hmm. And I seen right quick that I was not the one to do it because I have never done it.
Okay.
The first horse I got on, I like to fell off. So Ronnie says, now look, go back and get another one. And he says, you got to look at the cow. He says, if you take it off the cow, you're probably going to hit the ground. And that is more what is available to see that cow and watch that cow. And you know when that horse is going to make the turn as much as the horse does.
Okay. Okay. And so a totally different way of riding than what you had been doing before. Are you allowed, and I've seen these moves, are you allowed to hold on to the saddle horn when you ride?
Yes, sir. They started holding on to the saddle horn somewhere in the early 70s.
Okay.
Before that, they were able to rein the horse a little bit, keep it under control, and not have to hold on to the saddle horn. So that it's developed into, and the horses have got so much better than they were back then, and trained a little different. These horses nowadays, they're gonna run a straight line, stop, fold up, and go back with a cow, running a straight line, stop, fold up, and go the other way. Back in the 60s, 50s, back in there was a lot of the horses were actually working the cow sideways, really not making that move to the left on a straight line. They were, in other words, they were just do-si-do with a cow.
Oh, wow. Okay. And and you're giving me a lot of information here, which I absolutely love. Is to the gear, the saddle. Is the saddle you ride in, is there anything unique about that saddle?
Yes, sir. It's cut horse saddle. Your forks are a little higher. Your seat in the seat itself is a little deeper. And the horn is higher where you can grab a hold of it and you can set yourself down in the seat and feel pretty comfortable. If the forks have to be a little higher than a pleasure saddle or another saddle because these horses make such a dramatic move that you can come out of there pretty easy.
Okay. And setting up the saddle, stirrup length matters. I mean, you're riding on the ball of your feet. Michael, describe that a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of this is people like longer stirrups and some people like shorter stirrups. And the ball of their feet, their feet are more on into the stirrup than you would be riding a pleasure horse.
Oh, okay.
With the ball of your feet, you want to be able to push your toes down and go with that horse. You know, if you put your heels down on the up move, that's fine. But when that horse goes to stop, you got to mash the brakes. In other words.
Okay. And so it sounds like you put the stirrup all the way to your heel of your boot. And do you wear, I mean, what's typical? Cowboy boots? Are we talking lacers? What typically do we see?
We got cowboy boots.
Cowboy boots. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you talked a bit about the breeding and how a horse runs and stops in a straight line and folds back on themselves. How much of that is training versus breeding at that point? And I know breeding's a big part. How does the training enhance that nature of that horse, that cow sense that horse has?
Well, it just developed the way that's where the training comes in cutting horse. This horse wants to stop, and his first move is not forward, it's backwards. So he can bend that rib cage and come across that cow and stop it on the other side. Same way, back and forth. This horse, the more they run and stop and stay mirrored up with that cow and don't get behind on the cow, you know, that's whenever you start losing your points when you're showing. You've got to stay head to head with that cow.
Head to head. Okay, perfect. So let's go into the event. All right, and we've got a bunch of events we'll be talking about here that are going on down there at the Augusta Futurity. So you've entered an event. They call you in. It's your time to go. Is there a time limit, Michael?
2 minutes and 30 seconds.
2 minutes, 30 seconds. And how do you pace yourself during that 2 minutes and 30 seconds? How do you? All right, let me back up. Let me back up with a couple other questions, okay? So just generally, as I've watched these events, the competitor comes in, you've got this herd of cattle, and you determine that there's a particular cow that you want to pull out of that herd, that you want to cut out of that herd. Do you get to determine that, or is that drawn for you, that cow?
No, that's up to you.
Okay. And which one, why do you select the one you select?
People want a cow that will sit up in front of your horse and not go to running and be wild and go from wall to wall, which it's not bad, but you're just not accumulating them points. That if you set one up and you stay in the middle part of that arena, you're making plus. You're getting points. Mm-hmm. When that cow leaves and you lose a little bit of control of it, then you're getting points deducted. I hope I answered that question. I don't know.
You did. Do you study the cows? Do these cows move from event to event?
Well, these cows, in most of these events, they want cows that a horse has never worked, because a cow can get sour and actually not do anything. So you're looking at, when they settle these cows, most of your trainers, they're watching them settle the cows, and they're watching how that cow moves. If it moves with its head up, its tail curled, you probably want to stay away from that cow.
Really?
If you got a cow that's just lingering around.
Yeah. Why would you? I'm sorry. You said something that's really interesting. You got a cow that's got her head up and her tail crooked. Why would you stay away?
That cow is probably excited, and it's going to stay excited, and it's not going to sit up in front of your horse like I would like for one to do.
Okay.
If you got a cow that's just moseying around and got slow moves, because you want everything to slow down once you ride into that herd.
Mm-hmm. So you go
that cow is probably going to be the best one to cut.
Okay. And if you cut one and it doesn't work for you, it's too excited, it just has no interest in getting back to the herd, what do you do at that point in the middle of your competition?
Well, you can quit a cow once you get it out in the center of the pen, as long as that cow is standing still or moving directly away from you. You can quit that cow and go back in the herd and get another one.
Okay. So
if that cow's not doing what you want to try to get off that cow as quick as you can and go back in the herd and get another one. You usually end up cutting 3 cows in two and a half minutes.
Oh, really?
And believe me, it feels like you've been out there for 10 and a half minutes.
Okay. And do you signal to the judges that, hey, I'm going to quit this one, I'm going to go cut another one?
No,
don't need to do that. So
no, they'll know when you pick up on them reins and stop your horse from working, or put your other hand down on the neck of that horse, it'll stop immediately. And the judges will be watching that and make sure that you don't have a hot quit. That would be if the cow was not standing still and the cow was still moving and you quit. That would be a hot quit. And that would be like a 5-point deduction. Excuse me, a 3-point deduction.
3-point deduction. Okay. Mm-hmm. So a couple things. How many judges typically, Michael, at an event? And let's say we're going to go to the Augusta one here we talked about, the Futurity. How many judges?
You're going to have 5 judges in that Futurity.
Okay.
And they will take They would take the high and the lowest score and drop them out, and they would add the other three together.
Okay. And so by judge, what is the most points that a judge could award? A single
80.
judge. A single judge.
80 points. 80 points.
Okay. And does that judge start with 80 and do deducts, or how do they kind of come about their scoring?
Usually they start with a 60 and go up.
Okay.
I have judged the show, but it was because nobody showed up to judge one.
Yeah. Did you enjoy judging?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
So put your judging cowboy hat on. Your philosophy, you're gonna start with a 60. What's going to add points? Is it only horse, or is it also rider?
Well, it's on the horse and rider. It's 50-50. If you walk into the herd to get your cow out to cut, and you got 8 or 10 cows coming out in front of you, and you want to make a clean cut. In other words, you don't want to have 3 cows out there and you're chasing them back and forth. You want 1 cow and the others go back to the herd. Then you can drop your reins on that 1 cow and work it. But that would be called a clean cut whenever you get a cow out of 4, 5, or 6 that's in front of you and stop it, and all the cows go back to the herd except that 1 cow. You got a clean cut. You just would start from there, and you would earn points. And you would earn points on how you cut that cow, how you went about getting that 1 cow out. You could get plus or minus points.
Okay. And how will you work it once it's out? I take it. And if I'm not a great rider, you're going to deduct points from me. The horse is doing everything it needs to do, but I look sloppy. Going to cost me points?
No. Now, if you get sloppy on the horse, you're probably going to be on the ground. So
okay.
You're going to get a 0. But, most of you people that go in there and cut, they're going to be sitting in that saddle good.
Okay.
The showman part of it comes into it, but I don't think the judges look at that as much as they do the horse itself that's working the cow.
Okay. So understanding your scoring, we got 5. Each has 5 judges. Each has a maximum of 80 they could award. We get rid of the highest. We get rid of the lowest. So if I'm understanding right, the perfect highest score possible would be 80 times 3 or 240 points. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what are we seeing? Typical scores, and I know I'm looking at the events, and maybe this is a good time to roll up into the events. We've got amateurs, we've got open events. Let's talk a little bit about that, Michael, and if you wouldn't mind, with talking about the 2025 Augusta Futurity, what kind of numbers are we going to see in these events, and the money that's in each one of these events, and there's some big money here. And what would be the typical scores that a cowboy or cowgirl might have as they go through this competition? So, just looking at the schedule, Michael, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with your score. Typical score between 5 judges, one judge could mark you a 75. One judge could mark you a 74. Mm-hmm. One judge could see something different and mark you a 73, and then the other one a 72, and then the other one a 72 and a half. Okay. So you can have half points.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, sir. 220 222, 221, right in there is probably you're going to be in the top 4 or 5, or either win the cut.
Oh, really? Okay. And if I'm an amateur, and I know we got pros and we got amateurs and opens and all that, is my score, is it the same across the field? It doesn't care that I'm an amateur versus whatever, right? It doesn't say, oh, we give a little more points in the amateur because they're not pros. How does that go as a judge?
No, there's no change in the point system.
Okay. So talk a little bit about these events that they have this week that's going on, and it runs through what, the 17th, I believe? No, it runs through the 18th, doesn't it?
18th.
Saturday, yeah.
Well, the classes, I think that's where you want to go.
Yeah.
You have an open, you have non-pros, you have amateurs, and you have, in the open, anybody can show in the open. And you can show a horse in the open. It don't matter how much money that horse has won, you can still show that horse. Now, they have like 25,000 novice horse non-pro riders, and as long as that horse has not won $25,000, you can show in that class.
Okay.
So there's just several different classes that you can show, and there is a 2,000 limited rider for people that's just starting out. That's where they would probably start out. But that limited rider, the money is on you, not the horse.
Oh, okay. So if I'm a pro and I'm riding a horse that hadn't won money, I still have to go in the pro level with that. The scoring system, or the classification, I should say, follows me as a rider. And if I'm a pro, I've got to put that horse, no matter what, in the pro class or the open.
No. He could show that horse in any event as long as it hadn't won any money.
So it follows the horse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now it does on the, if it's a limited rider and you non-pros, you pros, it don't matter how much money you won on yourself. You can show that horse in any event but it's got to be a pro. It's got to be like the open.
Okay. So like on Monday the 13th, they had the 4-year-old open, and they talked a little bit about the Augusta Mulligan that's in brackets there, and it's a go-round competition on Monday. It was on the 13th. So it's a 4-year open with the Augusta Mulligan. Describe that particular class.
Well, what that is, it's like playing golf. Somebody can give you a mulligan, which in pro golf you don't have a mulligan, but friends out there playing do. You can enter that horse in the mulligan class again after you didn't score high enough to make the finals in the first run. You can go back and pay up again and show that horse again.
And if I do better on the second run, my mulligan run, and it's good enough to win the class overall, do I win the class?
No, yes, sir.
Oh, you do? Okay.
It just gives you a second chance. Is what it does.
Okay, but it costs you another entry fee.
Oh, yeah. It's going to cost you money.
And now that's only in certain classes, the mulligan?
Yeah, they only... I haven't seen it anywhere else other than the Augusta Futurity. Now, I don't know if there is anymore, but that's the only one I've ever seen it done at.
Okay. And a lot of added money there. So the mulligan, when did the mulligan come about? Do you remember?
It had to be in the last 3 years or 4.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was received pretty well? Or was that a thing, or was that Augusta and this particular show that added that in, the mulligan?
I think it's the particular show that added that in. Just don't hold me to that because, like I say, I haven't been, to very many cuttings that had a mulligan class.
Okay. And big money, I'm seeing from my research here on my paper, it says added money. This year's event features $350,000 in added money. And I take it that, like Rodeo, my entry fee, what would be my entry fee to get into, if I'm doing this right, into the open, to register for the open class? What's it going to cost me?
I believe that was $1,700.
$1,700. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And a certain percent that goes to pay back money, and then a certain percent goes to the futurity itself.
You bet. You bet. And in the open class, is that the premier class? If you said you can only come down one day, is there a premier class that you want to pay attention to?
Well, a lot of people like to see horses that have been showed a good bit and don't make a lot of mistakes. So you're looking at the upper non-pro classes. Last week was all your pro riders. Mostly there was only a couple of non-pro classes. But I like to watch the pros. Now the non-pros are okay too, but just knowing what I like to watch the open and the 4-year-old futurities.
Okay. And the class, the way it's set up, so if we talk about the open, there's go rounds and then there's finals, so there's a whole qualifying process, it sounds like, Michael?
Oh, yeah. In your futurities areas, now you can have a open class that is just a one-time class. Just like, say, if there was 30 horses entered in the open, and it's not the futurity. Most of your futurities have go-rounds. Your regular shows, they can have just an open class, a non-pro class, 25,000 non-pro, 3,000 novice horse, 5,000 novice horse, and basically you just have to go see what classes are available at what show.
And I can compete on multiple horses throughout the classes, right? As a rider, can I compete on multiple horses in a single class like the open?
I'm not quite aware that if they changed that or not. I know you can at your futurities. Just like this weekend, Austin Shepherd had 5 horses back into the 4-year-old open futurity part of it. So you can show multiple horses in that.
Okay.
I think you can show multiple horses in just the regular open also. But
Okay. And you were able to go down. I know you had snow, you had ice and everything down there, Michael. Were you able to go down to Perry and check out the competition this week?
Oh yeah, I left Thursday before the snow, and I came back yesterday.
Okay, so you were down there. Okay. And weather has hurt the competition, no doubt logistically hard to get there with the snow?
Yes, sir. It probably hurt it a little bit, but most of these people are used to driving. They're going to get there if it's all possible.
Okay. And the added money, we said $350,000. I saw prior years the money's upwards of $500,000, I believe. Big money and big contestant counts, up over 500 contestants also. And they have the stallion incentive. I saw that there's a $50,000 stallion incentive Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, I don't know as much about the incentive fund as somebody else would, but if you have a nice stud and he's breeding really nice horses, they will put money in that incentive fund, and if you go show one of that horse's babies and it happens to win that futurity, you get an extra 50,000, 60,000. Just depends on how much is in that incentive fund for that stud horse.
Okay. And nice segue into the bloodlines and the breedings. So there's stallion incentives, and of course a couple of the big names, Michael, that I've read a little bit about, Highbrow Cat and Metallic Cat. And can you talk a little bit about those horses and how have they been so dominant in this sport?
Ooh, Highbrow Cat I think he was the money leader for a long time in his offsprings. He may still be. Metallic Cat is a son of Highbrow Cat.
Mm-hmm. So,
it's just passed down through your genes and your horses. You breed good mares and good studs, you're going to pretty much have a good horse.
And we talk about this cow sense that the cutting horse has, which, in racing, they say a lot of the traits, they look to the mare to bring a lot of these traits to the sport. Is that true in cutting as well?
Yeah, the mares, some people say it's 60-40.
Okay. And so getting into training, can you walk us through? Now, I know you have trained and maybe still training. You've worked with cutting horses. So starting with a 2-year-old, I'm assuming, you're going to get them ready for this futurity. And how do we get them into this futurity class? When do I need to declare my horse for the futurity at the Augusta Cutting Horse event?
That futurity, the Augusta Court, you can have payments like you do at the big futurity in Fort Worth. I do know that in Fort Worth you pay futurity money. I mean, you pay it down the line up until December the 14th or whenever it is that futurity starts at Fort Worth, which is the big one. I mean, the NCHA futurity. Mm-hmm. At Augusta, I would say that you could probably, I just really don't know what the advance payment is on the Augusta futurity.
But it's a decent commitment of money, yes?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm only going to take my best and my brightest, if you will. I'm going to put them into that futurity pot. So,
yes.
So when do you start? Let's say I've got a 2-year-old and it's got good breeding, showing a pretty good sense of cow sense. Talk a little bit about bringing that horse on.
Well, at 2 years old, you're not going to know what kind of cow sense that horse has because you haven't ridden him yet. At 2, you're going to saddle him. You're going to work him in the round pen. You're going to train. You're going to take him along slow because you can hurt this bone development because it's gone down to where they're bred them where they're thinner bone horses compared to what they were 40, 50 years ago. But you start saddling that coat 2 years old and you work him every day or train him, and then probably after 3 to 6 months or something right in there, you can start him on cattle. And then you'll find out just exactly how much cow sense that coat has as a 3-year-old.
And you know pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, If they take hold of that cow and they work that cow without you having to do much training on them, you know it's got the ability. You just got to train it in them, you know.
Okay. But you're not cutting yet at 3 years of age, or are you on these horses?
Yeah, you're working them at 3 years of age. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you know, like I say, starting a young colt, you want to give them, you know, I'm saying anywhere 3 to 6 months before you work them on a cow, in my opinion. Now,
Okay.
it can change, you know.
Mm-hmm. So about the time they turn 3, you're putting them in front of cattle. You're putting them in the pen.
Yep. Yes, sir, especially if you're wanting to show in a futurity.
And I've heard there's now some training aids, right? Like almost robots, if you will, to work with horses on. Is that a thing in cutting?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But do they represent the same kind of cow sense? Does the horse still get it? That's the same as working a cow? You
know, that question right there, it just depends on how much that colt has been ridden. A lot of people are working their 3-year-olds on flags and, like you say, robot cows, but it does not, you know, satisfy you until you get in front of a real cow, and then you know about, you know, what that horse can do, because that real cow is doing it on his own. You're controlling that flag or the robot cow, and it helps. It keeps the horse. It keeps the horse interested in working, because it's a movable thing, you know.
Yeah.
Horses are very flighty, and they sometimes they see something like that, they might want to leave the pen.
For sure. For sure. No, that makes sense. And as you're coming up through, you're also working on conditioning of the horses, I take it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
And what might that look like?
What?
Conditioning program for that horse. I guess it's another way of saying, how do you get them into athletic shape?
Well, you feed them the best you can, and keep a check on their bone structure. And the cutting horses, the worst thing about cutting horses is keeping their hocks good, because they use the hocks so much that they can get bone spurs in them, and, you know, stuff like that. So conditioning that horse is going slow with the 2-year-old all the way up to the 3-year-old. And by the time they're three and a half, you can push them a little harder.
Okay.
But feeding is a big thing in conditioning a horse.
So talk a little bit about the types of feed, and no doubt it has to do with how hard we're campaigning or how hard we're working them, or the age of the horse, I would imagine, goes into it. So if you've got a 3.5-year-old, you're getting them ready to roll, what would be the typical feeding routine for a horse like that? And American Quarter horses, so I'm assuming, 800-900 pound animal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, so what would be the feed routine? What would you recommend on a horse that's in conditioning?
They're gonna feed grain, and then the best hay that's possible, which is usually most everybody uses alfalfa hay in conditioned horses. The main thing is those horses need something in their stomach every 12 hours, at least to have something in their stomach every 12 hours, because they can develop ulcers real easy. So it is a big deal. You have vets that help you. You have everything that you can possibly do to keep that horse sound and solid till, you know, you're ready to show him at the futurity.
You bet. And when you talk about ulcers, that we have a tendency to think in humans that stress builds ulcers, right? Is that true, or is that diet that affects ulcers in a horse? What's been your experience, Michael?
Well, I've asked several horses, but they ain't never told me.
No doubt.
But I'm going to say that I do, a horse that's stressed out, it's being overworked.
Okay.
And you can feel it. You can feel it in a horse, whether he feels good or he doesn't feel good. But the feeding process of it is the biggest deal in keeping a horse sound.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then travels. No doubt, as this horse gets, by the time you put him on the road, you're traveling. These guys that are coming into this show, they're traveling thousands of miles to get there, lots of hours on the road. How do you take care of a horse on the road? And do you have certain horses that simply stresses out more than others?
Well, like I say, I don't know which horse would stress out more than the other one. It's just a standard thing that you don't want them to spend more than 8 to 10 hours on a trailer, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. That's just like a human being. He works all day. He needs to rest and sleep the rest of the night. So that would be a good thing. People that do the long hauls, they liable to set up at somebody's place. They liable to drive 6 hours to somebody's place, put the horses up at night, load back up in the morning, and go again.
Mm-hmm. Give them a rest. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
And shoes. What kind of shoes? Is there a particular style of shoe that's used in cutting horses based on the movements that the horse is required to make?
Not that I'm aware of. Just a regular basic shoe. There you go again. Has that horse got a foot that's going the wrong direction, or needs his heel, hiked up a little bit? But I think shoeing a horse, you pretty well leave that up to your farrier.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And they can do whatever corrective shoeing is necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to help keep the horse safe as you're competing, splint boots, what else might a guy be using?
They use professional choice wraps, and that's the best that I've seen, I think. There's a lot of them on the market, what you call the splint boots, but splint boots are a thing of the past. They use more of a protective whole wrap instead of just from the knee down to the ankle, which a splint boot would fit in between that, but a protected wrap would go all the way down to the top of the hairline on the hoof.
On the hoof. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing wraps instead of boots these days in cutting.
Yeah, they like to do them wraps, yes.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. And when you get into this, you talk about injuries on the hocks, and we talk about shoeing and all the protection we can give them. Conformation, the general build of that horse. What are you looking for conformation? I would think that would go a long ways to, can they stand up to the rigors of cutting?
Yes, sir. Well, the conformation-wise, you're looking for your horse's neck to be about the same length as your horse's shoulder, from wither down to the end of his shoulder, and you want his back to be about the same length of his neck, and you want his hip to be about the same length as everything. You want 4 straight legs. You want some good stand-up bone structures in your knees and your hocks. And that's, and of course you want a pretty horse. You just, a nice headed horse, real clean in the throat latch, that's just some of the things. There's so many things you can look at conformation, but
Sure.
you want the good conformation on most of them. Yes.
Okay. And as you were growing up, you did pleasure, you did halter classes. So the same, and halter classes are hardly anything but judging the conformation of that horse. Similar looks or similar thinking, Michael, that you've been able to bring in good conformation as judged in a halter class translates to good conformation in the cutting arena?
Well, it has changed so many times what people want. You say, leave it alone.
Yeah.
But anyway, to answer your question, I think your conformation in halter is just as much as any horse, but you're going to have a little bit when you're showing halter horses used to, not no more, but you're looking at bone structure, muscle, length of the neck, length of the shoulders, it's all got to match.
Sure.
But used to you wanted the buck part of it. Nowadays they're going to trend it down a little bit and not want as much buck to the body. They're looking for, but they're still looking for conformation, straight legs, all that.
Okay. And I hear the term that horse has a good mind. What's a good mind of a cutting horse?
Well, my opinion is one that you can lead up in a barn, and he's not frightening out. He's the same as he was when you got him off the trailer, or if you took him somewhere. Of course they're going to be a little flighty when they're younger, but that good-minded horse will take all of it in, and by the time you get ready to go showing a cutting, you could ride that horse down Peachtree Street in Atlanta with sirens and everything. It wouldn't matter. But there's some horses that you couldn't do that with, Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed, and thank you for that description, one of the things I noticed is in the Augusta Futurity, they talked about having Mexican heifers in their herd. What role? Why does that make a difference to say you've got Mexican heifers?
They are a little bit more get up and go to them than your Angus and some of your regular breeding cows. I know at the Futurity this week they used a lot of F1, which is a cross between a Brahma and an Angus cow, or a black baldy, which would be a black Angus with white face, and crossed with Herefords. You polled Herefords, your red and white, and get your F1s. The more ear on them, it seems they got a little bit more energy, a little bit more movement. I hope I explained that pretty good. I don't know.
I think so. So I know you don't want them wild, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But you're
going to have, they're going to be wild. Some of them are, no matter what you got in there.
Yeah. And I would think, just watching what I've watched, you want a heifer or cow that is super interested in getting back to that herd. No matter what it takes, I want to get back to that herd.
Oh yeah, that keeps your cow faced up with your horse.
You bet.
If you got one that's running away from you all the time, you're not going to score that much points on it. Yeah.
Okay. And you talk about the F1. Are there ranchers that have cutting cow stock breeding programs? In other words, breeding specifically for cutting competitions?
I really can't answer that. My son has a lot of cows and breeding cows right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for money-wise, they like the F1s because they're good mamas and they're a little bigger cow and produce a little bit more meat on them. But for far as raising one for a cutting,
Yeah.
I don't know which is the best, and I don't know if there's a Pacific cow that they're doing right now.
Yeah.
But maybe we can find out from somebody else that's more into the cows.
So for this big event, how do they determine the herd or herds of cattle that they're going to be using?
Each rider gets 3 cows per entry.
Well, what I mean is, where does the event coordinator find the cattle?
Okay, feedlots.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That does.
Yes.
That does. And they'll just look at them a little bit, and they got a pretty good sense. Hey, this one looks like it's,
Well,
you know.
They will condition these cows to prior for futurity. Like they will start gathering these cows within a certain amount of time before the futurity comes up, so they can make sure they're not worked on horses. Yeah. And make sure that they're fed good and, have good quality. So they're preconditioning these cows for sure.
And not worked on horses prior to the competition.
In a futurity, that you really want what you call fresh cows.
Fresh cows. Okay.
When you get into your rerun cows, the cow has learned how to run real hard, stop, and slam dunk you and get back to the herd,
Okay.
They don't last very long.
Okay. So we've talked about the conformation and the conditioning and the feeding and the care of the horse. We've now talked about the cutting horse, the cutting cows that are being used and how they're conditioned. How does a rider get ready for a big competition like the Augusta Cutting Horse Futurity? What does a rider do from a physical standpoint to be in cutting condition?
It would be just like normal health. Just keep your body strong. Try to eat the right stuff. If you're on the road, you got to get somewhere in a hurry. You're going to go through McDonald's and get a hamburger. But anyway, conditioning would be the same way for working out for any sport. Riding these horses or being a horse trainer, you are working yourself out every time you get on a horse, believe me.
Yeah.
You're moving muscles that you don't use if you was just walking down the road.
Right. I gotta imagine, just a lot in the core, right? Balance has to be so critical. And as you said, that response, by the time you think about it, it's too late, right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's go to the mental aspect of this sport. And on Beyond the Chutes, we love talking about the mental aspect. We talk about the rodeo mindset, wrestling, racing mindset. Now we're going to talk the cutting horse mindset. And we're talking about the competitor, the rider. What is that? If you watch somebody, you might say he's got the right mindset. How would you describe, and you've been a competitor, how would you describe the right cutting horse rider mindset?
Confidence. Number one, knowing that you can go in there and give it your best, just like in any sport, but you try not to put any weight on your shoulders. Just go with what you've been doing and what you feel like you can do, and a lot of times it'll turn out. But that cow standing out there in front of you is going to determine what you do, no matter what.
Yeah.
And your horse. So, but the mindset you got to have confidence and the right people helping you.
Absolutely. And the right people helping you build confidence in your riding ability, in the training your horse, in building that mindset. Michael, what do you, when you say you got to have the right people helping you?
Okay, well, you know, you got two hold herders that's in the class with you, and you got two turnback people. And they pretty much have got to be confident in what they're doing and know exactly when to move that cow or when to leave that cow alone. Don't your herd holders sitting there, they got to watch the herd that's behind you, make sure that nothing comes running out and ruins your run. So it's actually 5 people that is in that contest right there.
Oh, wow. Okay. That can affect your run, can affect your ride.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
yes.
How do you keep a balanced field there? I mean, you got pros, right? The herd holders and the turnback folks. These are pros.
Yes.
They know what they're doing.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So let's shift a little bit to your experience. You grew up in Georgia. Where were you born and raised, Michael?
I was born and raised in Douglasville, Georgia.
Okay.
A little small town between Atlanta and Birmingham. I was 10 years old, I guess, when I went to my first barn. My guy that taught me a lot about horses was Mac Abercrombie, who he had a horse barn right there in the middle of town. We'd run anywhere from 25 to 30, 40 horses at his place at all times.
Okay.
And like I say, none of my family ever had anything to do with a horse. My daddy might have plowed a mule, but they never done anything with horses. But it stuck to me, and growing up right there in that small town and being able to see, like 1956 is whenever they started bringing registered quarter horses across Mississippi to Georgia. In 58, that was the first time I ever saw a registered quarter horse dropped off at his barn.
So at Mac's barn, I was going to ask. So
that was at Mac Abercrombie's barn in Douglasville, Georgia.
In 1958, you saw your first quarter horse.
My first registered quarter horse.
Registered quarter horse. And
yes.
What stood out for you, if you can remember, about that registered quarter horse?
Well, it was pretty, and it had papers to prove what the breeding was on it, and so on. And you just, if you wanted to go catch a cow, you'd want that horse,
Okay.
He could run and stop, and he just 3-gated, so he could walk, trot, and canter. Some of the other gated horses, they were 5-gated, so they couldn't run as fast as that 3-gated horse. And we dealt with a lot of walking and racking and 5-gated horses selling out of that barn. Mr. Abercrombie, he trained mules to go down into Grand Canyon when he was living in Arizona.
Really? Okay.
So he was one of the most talented people I ever been around, knowing horses, mules, and whatever.
And was he a horse trainer? Was he a horse trader, Michael?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. We would go to Brady Avenue in downtown Atlanta, and that's where the sale barn was, and probably the only horse sale barn that I knew of in the 60s all the way up to probably the 70s, 75, somewhere along in there. They started having a little bit more auctions. There was some that's where he would go trade horses, and then he had a couple of people that would bring horses to his barn on the way to that sale from Mississippi. That was Ray Lum, who was an auctioneer and mule trader, and then there was another trader named Tom McGuire that would buy horses, in Arkansas, Texas, and wherever, and then bring them east and sell them right there in Atlanta.
Okay. And was there competition coming out of his barn? Meaning, was he in any horse showing or that sort of thing?
Mr. Mack wasn't.
Okay.
All the guys that rode at the barn, that's in the '60s when they started having open shows, which was not, AQHA shows. I think the first AQHA show that I remember being in Georgia was probably in '68, I believe, or '69. I'm not certain. That's a long time back.
Yeah.
But anyway, all the guys that rode at the barn and helped Mr. Mack ride his horses and train them and show them when people would come Saturday. We would have all the horses in the barn on Saturday morning, and people would be driving from all around coming to buy a horse at that place because it was the only place to buy one.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how old were you when you found Mac and got involved with him?
10 years old.
10 years old. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And, I mean, you did it all? You mucked stalls, you fed horses, you rode horses?
Yes, sir.
And when did you...
Most of our horses then, they were not put in stalls. I mean, we had stalls, but we had an open barn where we'd bring them in, and they would eat there, and then at the end of the evening, they would go back out to the pastures.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So able to free range kind of. And
free range.
I have talked with Marlon Harris. This was the place to go on a Saturday morning or during the day on Saturday. He either got his dad to haul him down to the barn so he could hang out with the horses and with the cowboys, or he would ride his horse, and it sounds like he grew up about 15 miles away from the barn there.
That's right.
And she also had the Atlanta sale barn, and he said that was a treat to go to that.
Yes, sir. They had a sale I believe it was Thursday nights. I believe it was. Instead of on the weekends, I think it was during the week. But we all went to that sale barn because that was the thing to do to find horses and see horses.
Yeah. And just a bunch of young men crazy about horses, it sounds like, Michael.
Yes, sir. That's what it was.
And what do you think you'd have done if you hadn't have found horses? Where do you think you'd ended up, Michael?
Well, I really don't know what I would have done, but whenever these rodeo guys, Marlon, Jerry DeLay, and all of them, we was all about 15 or 16, and they were starting going to Preston Folks Rodeo up there at Mount Cove, Georgia.
Sure.
And they kind of forced me in to go ride bareback horse.
Now, wait a minute. Forced you? Is that like...
Well, it was one of them double dog dares,
okay.
And if you don't go, you're gonna have a bunch of guys just kidding you for the rest of your time around there.
So peer pressure.
Pure pressure, yes.
And if they'd have told you, Michael, to jump off a bridge, would you have done that too?
Well, maybe because I could swim better than I could ride a bareback horse, I guarantee you.
So they took you to Preston Folks Rodeo right down there in beautiful Mountain Cove, right down there by Chattanooga. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And that was quite a historic place to ride bucking horses if that's your first time doing it.
Oh, yeah, that was my first and last time.
Oh, it was. Now, to be clear, You had never put a rigging on a bareback horse, even at the barn, even messing around?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Never had run your hand in the rigging, nothing.
They all helped me and gave me advice.
Did they?
And you probably know how that went.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Was
Hold
that the
on.
advice?
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, that's all. It's simple. It's only 8 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
And
But anyway,
yeah.
just getting back to what I would have done if I hadn't wanted to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
I was always wanted to be a cowboy, be able to ride horses, train horses, and all that.
Yeah.
And so, after this was all over with, even after my girlfriend telling me not to do this because it's not what you want to do.
Yeah. And you were pretty clear. You knew it wasn't, Michael. You knew this wasn't.
I knew it was not, but I had to do it. So,
yeah.
Anyway, when I got through that Saturday night, next Sunday morning, I woke up and I decided, I said, look, I told everybody, I said, I can make more money training these horses not to buck than I can getting in this rodeo and going out there and falling off.
Yeah.
So that's how I became horse trainer.
Well, sometimes you got to do things, sometimes you learn something from everything, and sometimes you learn what not to do.
Yes, sir.
And it sounded like that's what this was. Did you? And just no desire to ever do it again.
No, never had another even thought about doing it again.
That was it. And even though you had a good seat from riding horses all those years, getting on a bareback, it just did not translate.
No, well, no, sir. Because I knew. I said to myself, I said, look, you're going to eventually get hurt.
Yeah. So
you might as well just not do it.
Yeah. And did you get a bit hurt, bit banged up, sored up?
Well, I got some bruises and sore places from that ride.
Yeah.
But it was nothing that would, put me in the hospital or anything. So
yeah.
I was plumb proud that I think I made 6 seconds, I believe.
Yeah. Did you really? That's pretty good your first time.
Yeah. but there was a lot more to it than just sitting up there. You had to spur the horse, in the shoulders and so.
Mark them out.
Anyway, I was proud of myself what I did, but I was more proud of not doing it again.
Okay. I bet there's been some life lessons you've taken from that. Next time somebody says, hey, come on, we're going to dare you to do it. What would be your response at that point? After you'd done that and been goaded into doing it, what do you think your response the next time would have been?
Y'all can call me whatever you want to, but I'm not doing it. I will take all the embellishment y'all have.
Yeah.
And go right on the way I'm going.
I love it. Cool.
Us growing up at Mr. Mac's barn, and there is history. I mean, there was a lot of websites about Mr. Mac's barn and the people who grew up there and went on to be horse trainers and stuff like that. There was a real good story of years about maybe Mr. Mac took in all the people, all the kids, and taught them stuff and paid them to work at the barn. It might have been 50 cents or something like that, but they did get money to go to the picture show. But the one of the real good stories about Mac Abercrombie, he was a sheriff there for 20 years, and they tried to get him to re-up, but he wouldn't do it. So he had 2 guys working for him. And they were young. Guess they were 20, 21, somewhere along in there. And the story goes on that they decided they was going to go to the King Ranch and become cowboys.
Oh, wow.
So they stole one of Mr. Mac's pickup trucks.
Oh.
This was probably 1959 or 60, somewhere along in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they got caught with it somewhere in Arkansas. And they called Mr. Mike on the phone and told him that they had them two guys that had taken his truck, and he wanted to know what he wanted to do about it.
Yeah.
Mr. Mike told the sheriff out there, he says, well, I would like for you to sell the truck, send me the money,
Yeah.
and you can have them two guys
Right.
and keep them there.
Right.
So that was a story that went around for a long time, and it's still there. And it is quoted in a book that one of my friends that was writing a book about it. So
Wow.
very interesting guy he
Yeah.
was.
Sounds like he had a lot of impact, very, very positive impact on a lot of young folks.
Oh yeah, he really did. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you learned how to work.
Yes, sir.
And work together.
You had to work together and tote your load, and like I say, you're liable to get $1.25 on Saturday night. Go to the picture show. It didn't cost but a quarter
I was
or
going to say
15 cents to get in. You know.
I was going to say. So yeah, you was going to have probably a hamburger when it was all done too out of that, wasn't you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We'd get lunch money.
Yeah.
In the middle of the day, we'd ride our horses up to the cafe in town, tie them out back, go in and eat lunch.
Oh wow, very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. That is so neat. When did you get into horse showing?
In the AQHA, I guess it was 1970. I went to work for some family in Carrollton, Georgia that wanted to get in the horse business, wanted to show horses, and went and bought some horses. And that was the good mare that I had that probably put me in the winner's circle a lot of times. There was probably three people that showed with me: Brad Gibby, Randy Wilson, and gosh, I can go on and name more and more and more. But when first started going to the AQHA shows, that was the open shows wasn't quite as it wasn't quite as strong. Competition wasn't quite as good, but the AQHA shows was really good, and I stayed with the barns there till about 73, and they decided to get out of the business, and I went on to Atlanta and rode horses in Atlanta, and then in 1980, 81, 2, and 3, I was in Texas and worked for Governor Clement's son on a ranch right there in Forney, Texas. And then I got involved in like I say, wanting to ride cutting horses. So from about 89 and on up to now, that's what I do.
So 1989, were you still in Texas? I know you were in Forney, Texas, you said, through 83.
And 89 is when I come to work for Bob Rutland down here. And another good friend of mine that grew up at Mr. Mac's barn and rode horses, Donald Chance, and had some cutting horses. So I went to work down there. Donald was doing most of the cutting horses, and I was hired as a hunter's guide because I knew a lot about hunting deer and quail and stuff like that. And then about 2 years, I had a little old mare that was at the barn that I started riding her and went to my first cutting with her. And I'll never will forget Sam Shepard, which is Austin Shepard's father. We were a little old show, jackpot cutting horse show at Alabama. And I decided I was going to get in the open. And I never had showed this little mare. She had worked cows at home, but I got on her, and Sam Shepard went in there, and he marked like a 73.
Oh, wow.
right before me.
Okay.
And I said, "Oh Lord, how am I going to beat the 73?"
Yeah.
So he turned around and helped me, like the herd holders and turn back guys and stuff like that. And that little mare went in there, and I got a cow out of the herd and dropped my hand, and Lord, she was great. And Sam says, "Well, son, say you go back in there and do that again, you probably gonna beat me."
Yeah.
And oh man, I was nervous. I had a pretty good ride on the second cow, but the third cow just went from wall to wall, and I think I marked 69 or 70, something like that. But
Yeah.
anyway, that was my first showing, so
And how
I
did
don't
you
where I
end up?
got carried away.
And you said, "This is me. This is what I want to do."
Yeah, this is what I want to do. I'm tired of showing pleasure horses and stuff like that.
Okay.
I wanted something a little fancier and a little movement, you know.
Okay. So when you went in, you went in. So you're a cutting horse competitor, right?
Yes.
Are you breeding? Are you getting into breeding programs and training at that time, Michael?
Yeah. When I came back from Texas, I got married again, and I was working at the ranch in Social Circle. And she liked cutting horses. And of course, Ronnie Hodges was close to me, and he was all cutting. And Karen's mom and dad bought this nice stud horse that he was my son of a doc, and I have an own daughter, Gaybar King, which was great breeding, probably in the early 90s right there. And it just developed from there, and then I went to work over here at the place I'm at now, and for some people, and I kept the horses, and I'm not doing a whole lot of training. I do have a mare that I have trained on a little bit. And maybe gonna show her one of these days. I don't know, but I'm getting a little old in the tooth, so I don't know how long it's gonna take before I get back. But I enjoy going to the cuttings. That's the main thing I want to watch right now.
Okay. And this mare that you're working, at some point, you'll think you'll get her into competition?
It's very possible.
Okay.
It's very possible. She will work a cow. She's not ready to go show, but if my health holds up and everything, maybe come about August or somewhere like that, I may take her and show her somewhere. Yes.
Nice. Okay.
My son, he's a roper.
Oh, he is.
He's a header.
Oh, okay.
And we built a nice roping pen here, so he does that, and then he's got a bunch of cows and takes care of them and works every day. So we just all here, and I guess that's where we're going to be for the rest of the time.
You bet. And man, been involved with horses since you were 10, and your whole livelihood has been based on horses.
Yes, sir.
Wow. And lots of great adventures and so forth. So let's go back then to a great big question.
Yes, sir.
Where do you see the cutting horse industry headed in the next 10 years? What are you seeing out there?
I don't see much change. I see it's going so well right now. And, everything's based on the economy. And as long as people can breed and raise and show these horses, it's going to just get better and better and better. And more money is going to be involved in it.
Okay.
But there's one thing a fella told me, says if you want to make $1 million in the horse business, you better start out with $3 million to start off with.
Right. So how would, let's say, we inspire somebody to listen to this podcast? Maybe they're a horse person, right? Maybe they've got a good seat and all that sort of thing, and they're interested in getting into the cutting horse competition. what's the first thing you'd tell them to do? Where would you point them?
Find somebody that's out there that's winning cutting, and go under their wing and let them teach you from the start.
Okay. And are there cutting horse training clinics that as a rider I could go to, that I could take my horse to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every month.
Really? A lot of them going on?
A lot of them going, yes.
Okay. So what's the biggest lesson, Michael, that cutting horses have taught you about life outside the arena?
Oh, well, I would say don't be what they call a horse trader. Be what your honesty will let you do, and keep your honesty in the horse business, and just stay confident.
Okay.
Just do what you want to do.
Do what you want to do. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I love that. I love that. And final question of our conversation today, and man, we have covered a lot of ground here, Michael. Well, there's more. There's more. We've got more. Yeah.
There is more.
Okay. So my final question of today's conversation. If you could spend one day with a horseman, female or male, or a legend of cutting, past or present, still with us or passed on, who would it be?
Oh, it would be Buster Welch.
Tell us about Buster.
Well, he grew up back in the old times when it was really rough. He's had several futurity winners, and he had little Peppy, come from the King Ranch, actually worked on the King Ranch, and I would say that probably, I don't know, if you had 50, 60 trainers right there in the room, they've all watched him, and they all learned from him.
And
so, he would be the number one person that you'd want to sit down and spend time with, to talk to about cutting horses.
And I'm going to put you on the spot. What's the one question you'd want to ask Buster?
Lord, you have put me on the spot. I would really want to ask him this: what gave him the incentive to stay with what he did in such a hard time, and make such a name, and have a bronze statue put up on you outside of Will Rogers Coliseum? What was I guess it was, training the horse. How could you help me? And something like that. There's so many things that you just want to listen to what he's got to say. You wouldn't want to ask him what to tell you.
Oh, this has been great today, Michael. This has been great. Anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you, or anything you want to share before we say goodbye?
No, I really don't. I would just tell these young people that if they want to get in the horse business, no matter what it is, ride horses or show horses, just be honest and work hard every day, and watch people that's already been there, because they'll teach you a lot.
Great advice. Thank you, Michael, for being on Beyond the Chutes today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of our podcast with Michael Walton. If you do, please share it with your friends. Word of mouth is always the best advertising. Now, to make your listening easier, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Simply search for Beyond the Chutes and follow us. Subscribe, and then you'll be notified by these streaming platforms when new BTC episodes come out. And while you're there, rate us, give us comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you like reels, we got reels. Check out our Beyond the Chutes Facebook page and click follow. In addition, we post up all of our new episodes. Another easy place to find it, again, that is Beyond the Chutes, our Facebook page. And we want to say thank you to Parasite Systems for their support with our podcast. Our show is presented by Parasite Systems, who help vet clinics and animal owners experience the power of sight. New in 2025, the all-in-one analyzer featuring FecalSight AI, HemoSight AI, and FlowSight AI technologies. Now offering over 37 tests to help veterinary practices save time, money, and pets. And we have a coupon for your mail-in testing of your horses, dogs, and cats. Simply go to parasitesystems.com and use our coupon code BTC023 for 50% off your testing. And we'd like to give a great big thank you to the IRA Project Facebook group for all their help and guidance. Tim Sparks and Marlon Harris have really helped us connect with the rodeo greats of the IPRA. This is Beyond the Chutes Rodeo Podcast. Until next time, my name is Doug Simcox. Thank you for listening.